like they do in other parts of the country.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to be very careful here because, as I said from the beginning of this whole conversation, this endeavour about the feasibility study, it does no one any value for us as a government, for ourselves as a department, and for myself as the minister who will be part of these very specific discussions to have any position whatsoever. That's the reality of where we are. We're trying to find what Nova Scotians want us to do, so I don't want to be advocating for or against. But technically speaking, just with respect to the member's comments a few minutes ago, the Antigonish corridor took 10 years. It's 16 kilometres. Which is a great project. Again, we all understand the merits of it. What we're talking about with these 8 corridors is 300 kilometres. So look at the time it would take. That's 16 kilometres. We're talking 300 if we were going to do them all. And of course, you would prioritize, and the member's not suggesting we would do all 8 at once. But the reality is that it is not simply based on the construction timeline that this took 10 years. Obviously, again, we had a restrictive capital plan. Even in the years when the capital plan was expanded greatly from 2008 probably into about 2012-13 with some of that federal stimulus, even then, of which the member had mentioned the federal contribution. Even at that point, you've got to stretch these projects out that are $160 million to address 16 kilometres. So there is a time factor there. Again, I'm not going to make that argument. If you're looking at design, build, and how it's done differently through the private versus public sector, again, I'll digress from that because I don't want to be championing the for or the against side. But there would be an impact on the time frame for these large-scale projects. So I think that with respect to with respect to the federal government and building Canada, every conversation that we've had, I've had personally with Minister Garneau, of course, but in particular Minister Sohi, who I think I've had about 4 occasions now to talk to him directly. We always mentioned the feasibility study, and we broke it down in great detail. So, again, what happens moving forward, what our priorities are for highway construction, they're very aware of, and regardless of what happens here, what transpires with this public communication, with this public consultation, and where we go, the federal government is very aware that we will be making specific requests, large-scale requests, on some of the future highway projects that we want to get done. So that they're on the table regardless, but again, we certainly have to prioritize inside our capital envelope. I mean, regardless of the funds you get from the federal government, you also have to put your own up as well. So that becomes subject of our own capital plan and our priorities as we move forward. So those discussions are taking place. We're going to do what we can. We're always going to be adding and improving the 100 series. Just really the timeline is what's impacted by these types of decisions. And again, the feasibility will give us significant information on how Nova Scotians react to that and what they want us to do moving forward.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to ask the Minister very directly, will a federal contribution to the twinning projects be built into the financial models?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
The answer is yes, Mr. Speaker. Any of the highway projects that we have, any of the proposals, any business cases that we put together would always have a federal element to those.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'll just ask, what is the plan to maximize the federal contribution before asking Nova Scotians to consider tolls?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
So, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if there's a specific question that I can answer there. I might have missed the specific part. Would the member mind giving that one to me again? I think I missed that.
The Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The question is, what's the plan to maximize the federal contribution before asking Nova Scotians to consider tolls? And just for a little extra detail, the Build Canada Fund, which would be one of the funds, there are others. There's a Trans-Canada Highway Fund and some others, are cost shared. Sometimes it's a third, a third, a third. Not a third, a third, a third in this case, or 50-50. I think Nova Scotians want to know that the federal contribution is maximized and not reduced by our tolls. Let me ask it another way. Can the minister assure Nova Scotians that any tolls they're asked to consider would only be used to cover what would be the provincial contribution to these highway agreements?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks sincerely to the member for clarifying that. The answer is absolutely, of course, with any project. We would want the maximum federal contribution. As the member is probably aware, with the former Building Canada Fund, which is still in play to a certain extent, there is a per capita breakdown, so there is an allotment per province. So within those confines, we would apply for a certain amount of money, and there's a certain portion of each project that we would submit that would be federal, and that would be the maximum. So I think the member's point that he's making about would we use federal funds to cover the provincial portion? That's not the case at all. We would every project we have, whether it follows this wide-scale feasibility or it's within the current capital envelope and the current proposals that we're working on, they would all include a very significant provincial investment and an allotment from our capital plan as well.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this is one of those cases where the devil really is in the details, because we have 8 projects. Our Build Canada Fund is limited by our population, and surely we won't get federal funding for all 8. That leads to fairness issues from one project over another, where the tolls might be only required to be a lesser amount, where there's a big federal contribution, a bigger amount in another region of the province where there's a no federal contribution or a smaller one. It's not really a question. It's something I know we're going to be worried about as we try and figure out how to finance all 8, not all at once. I completely agree, but I'll just leave that for thought for now. In the meantime, Mr. Chair, I want to finish on the subject of safety, because no matter what timeline you're on, it's going to be a while before we have these roads, tolled or otherwise. It's going to be years. There's the consultations, then there is the agreements, then there's the federal negotiations, and so on. Never mind the construction costs. So, for right now, for Fire Chief Joe and for everyone out there, are there safety measures we can take on our highways today that will make them safer while this is all worked out?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the member opposite. Absolutely. The most frustrating part of the large-scale capital investments sometimes is that it just takes so many calendar years to get through them. So with respect to what we do in the short and medium term, that's really the basis for what we've been deciding are from the studies that we embarked on last year. So it was 103, 104, and 101 studies that we put together. Very detailed information about some of the short and medium-term safety improvemements we can make. Some of them are built into the capital and the annual operating budget. So in each region, the TIR staff on the ground would make some of those decisions and those investments to increase safety and enhance our ability to keep Nova Scotia drivers safe. Signage, the visibility, obviously the winter maintenance, the things we do during the winter months, all of the short-term decisions we can make to rumble strips are another good example that we've applied to many areas of the province, and they've made a difference. So again, the Cadillac of safety truly is twinning, but short of that, there are things we can do. Speed reduction is usually a part of that in certain corridors for sure. It's amazing to see the very sad, somber reports that we get through the department with respect to losses of life on the highway, major collisions that result in significant injuries to people. It's sad, and a lot of cases it's preventable. Obviously, impaired driving is a devastating impact on our roads. Driving too fast is always a factor, whether it be in the summer months. Ironically, some of our highest levels for fatalities on the highway happen in the summer because people drive too fast. Of course, distracted driving is emerging as a significant issue, and you know, that's texting and driving and talking on your phone. Manipulating your phone in any way increases the risk of an accident and something serious happening on the roads. And of course, the conditions. We happen to be in a province where there's significant precipitation at many times of the year, and when you don't have proper speed maintained, that becomes very critical to your safety. So there's a lot of things we can do. Education's a big part of that, but at the end of the day, a lot of it truly comes down to roadside and road corridor engineering, and short, medium steps help, and those long-term improvements and ensuring that highways are twinned really is the way to keep Nova Scotians safe. Thanks.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is an impressive list of things we can do. Just want to add that turning off the radio when your political counterparts are talking on political talk radio shows, which can sometimes be distracting. I'm sure he's had this experience, I know I have, is also a thing we can do. Or put a music station on is an improvement for our own safety. I've heard him on the radio when I've been driving. Yes, exactly. That's right. And it's not a funny topic. It's a serious topic, but just on that point to add to his list. The serious point, of course, Mr. Chair, is that there are things we can do now. Education, of course, is a long-term thing. Clamping down on illegal driving, whether it's distracted driving or texting while driving or impaired driving, absolutely. Within the Department of Transportation, though, is there anything in the budget for this year that is aimed at improving safety on our existing highways, such as rumble strips, such as the collapsible railings, and so on? And if so, could the Minister share with us what those things are?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And of course, we do build those short and medium term improvements we can make are built into the capital project, so they are part of that. Obviously, with things like signage and other operational aspects, they're built into the budgets as well, so they're on an operating side. So there always are things that we can do to enhance safety, and every opportunity that we have to do so, we certainly do.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just occurred to me a few minutes ago, the Minister mentioned P3 Canada. Can he elaborate a little bit on who P3 Canada is and what discussions his department has had with them about our highways?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. P3 Canada is a federal crown corporation. The tie-in for us and where it's all sort of come together with respect to Minister Sohi is that they just were brought over into the Department of Infrastructure. So we have a direct connection there vis-a-vis Minister Sohi. We had one conversation, a large meeting with them probably a month ago maybe, just to break down sort of where we were, what this feasibility looked like. So we gave a full-scale description of what we were looking at, the 8 corridors. We obviously don't have a whole lot of specific information because that study's still ongoing. But we basically gave them a breakdown of what we could potentially be looking at, and what would be the process should we apply. And the one thing is, as always, as we've said every time this discussion has taken place, for us, we have to know that our people in the province are behind us first. So we won't advance anything to P3 Canada until we actually have those, the feasibility study done, of course, but those public consultations and that full array of public feedback, so we know where Nova Scotians want us to be, and then we could tap P3 Canada at that point.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that's a pretty thorough review of where we are on the twinning and/or tolling of the highways. So I'd like to move on in the minutes I have remaining to an easier topic for the Minister, which is the Yarmouth Ferry. The ultimate tolled route, I guess. Mr. Speaker, let me just start off by asking the Minister if he has an update for us on the status of the ferry schedule, the crossing schedule, which I guess is in the hands of Portland City Council, or it was the last time we talked about it.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with respect to the schedule, and again, as I mentioned to my colleague from Queen Shelburne during our exchange, this platform gives us an opportunity to explain things and take a little bit of the tension and a little bit of the heat away from the debate with respect to how we're messaging to Nova Scotians and what we're saying about this all-important topic for us. With respect to Portland, like anything else, Mr. Speaker, like a process that we would follow here with our provincial cabinet, like any government body would have established, the City of Portland is clearly directly connected, officially connected to the administrative portion of their terminal, of their port. So the discussions that have taken place between Mark MacDonald at Bay Ferries and the Portland officials at the terminal, at the gateway, the Ocean Gateway, have been taking place for months. Since Mark secured the right to negotiate with the province of Nova Scotia, he'd been having those conversations. So clearly, the people in Portland were well versed, well aware, well informed on every single step that Mark MacDonald was taking in Bay Ferries. That wasn't the province of Nova Scotia doing that, Mr. Speaker. That was the relationship that Mark MacDonald had with the City of Portland based on history, his experience, and obviously his reputation. So they worked out a lot of those details. Clearly, Mark MacDonald, as you can imagine, I think he'd given this indication and this feel. He's a small C conservative guy in the sense that he's not over-promising anything. He's very, very poised, very, very calculated, and he's not going to make a promise that he can't commit on. So when developing the schedule, these things were, from his perspective, confirmed and understood to be the case. So those conversations had taken place. Now we're at that point. Obviously, we have a vessel. We don't have a specific stamped approval from the council and mayor at Portland because this is their process, just like, again, like we would follow through our cabinet. So that decision has to be made. I can't speak to their decision. It would be misleading for me to suggest that there's nothing to worry about. They're going to say, yes, it's going to be a rubber stamp. Out of respect for the process that we follow in a similar fashion here, they have to, the mayor, the council, the people elected by the people of Portland for that city have to deliberate on these things, understand the impact. It's a very busy port. Lots of things happen in there. The timing is significant, and the timing is very, very tight. So they have to deliberate on that. Obviously, it's clear where we're hoping it goes, but I don't want to in any way jeopardize that to talk about a process that has to take place through an elected body. So we're feeling good about the decision. There's no doubt about it, but we'll let it unfold, and they'll make their decision, and we'll react from there.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure what tension and heat the Minister was talking about. We can debate these things in a pleasant way. In fact, I just heard the Minister say Conservatives are poised and that they're calculated, and that they are financially responsible, and that they don't make promises they can't keep. I can't tell you how much that has relaxed me to hear him say that. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Well, small c, big C, I mean, conservative. It's wonderful that he thinks so highly of Conservatives. I really do want to thank him for those great compliments, Mr. Speaker. We are talking about the schedule for the ferry. We'll get into the cost, of course, in the course of questioning, but at the moment we're talking about the schedule. It is very important how that schedule is set, or when it's set, what it actually turns out to be. I know that they're marketing the boat on the basis of the tentative schedule that's in place now. It's important to the people of Yarmouth and to all Nova Scotians that we maximize the benefits on our side by having a schedule that allows the boat to overnight here, that maximizes the tourism opportunity here. Hopefully, I think we're all hoping that we get the schedule we want, but I think we have to know, and this is my question, are we locked in no matter what the schedule turns out to be?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm not sure exactly which aspect of being locked in, so maybe the member can articulate on that when he gets back up. But again, as I said many times, and I stand by this, and I'll say it repeatedly over the questioning that we have over the next few hours we're together with respect to estimates, but at the end of the day, we have full confidence and full faith in Mark MacDonald and Bay Ferries, and what I mean by that specifically is, it isn't obviously the oversight and the relationship is important from a government perspective, but the operational aspects of the Nova Scotia Ferry, the CAT, have to be with Bay Ferries. So all of these components, clearly when it comes to the schedule, there is a benefit for us, and that's what we were looking for, and that's what we had hoped for, and obviously that's the case. When in discussions with the Portland terminal, stressing the points of what was important and required for Bay Ferries, obviously that was an endeavour and a fight that was led by Mark MacDonald. So at this point, the schedule is what it is. Again, I wouldn't foresee Mark putting it out there with zero chance that you know, it's going to be set in that way, and that's going to be the schedule. He's got to have some certainty, no question about that. But again, we're happy and comfortable with the diligence that's been put forth by Bay Ferries. Clearly, this is a decision and a process that has to take place in Maine. I think it's very unfair to suggest that we've got this mountain of uncertainty ahead of us with respect to the schedule. Look, one of the realities of this is everyone understands two things about the Nova Scotia Ferry and the relationship with Portland and the importance of this service. There's some tough realities here with respect to building up that market because of it being gone for 4 years. There's a lot of work that we have to do. Bay Ferries has to do, the province has to do, our tourism operators have to do to get that stability back, and that's critical and that's well known. You know, and the other aspect of this is that there are hiccups that are going to take place. With every operation that we have, there's always risk that things go badly. And I know this has nothing to do with the schedule, nothing to do with Bay Ferries. I know that there will be some challenges this year, next year, 5 years from now. And every time something comes up, it's difficult when you're trying to promote and support a particular service and a file that's critically important to the province, that we're going to have to say the sky is falling and this is the end. With respect to the schedule, it's an operational issue. It's something that I know Mark will deal with competently. I've got the full confidence in how he operates, and when that decision's made, we'll be reacting to it clearly, but we're comfortable with where we're at, and at this point, the operational decisions will be left with Bay Ferries, and they'll do a good job.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me try this question a different way. We all hope that we get the best schedule possible. Is it the position of the department that we're going ahead with this agreement regardless of what the schedule is when Portland makes its decision?
The Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have an agreement with Mark MacDonald for the first 2 years of this service with this the CAT vessel. That is a relationship that's set in place. I cannot speculate. This is one aspect of a number of aspects that encompass the overall operational plan for Bay Ferries and for the CAT. The zero-sum game of trying to anticipate what Portland's going to do vis-a-vis the schedule and how it impacts the relationship with ourselves and Mark MacDonald is just, it's impossible to try to explain that in a sense of if all is lost, depending on what the City of Portland says. Clearly, like everything else related to the Nova Scotia ferry, I've been honest and upfront. We've had to put the numbers out clearly. We've given people an indication of what the investment was, why we did it, and why we see it as being important. And we've always maintained that the operational decisions will be left to Bay Ferries. They want this to succeed. It's clearly important for them as well. I think looking back at the entire process, the amount of pressure and scrutiny and criticism that's been faced by Mark MacDonald, I think, has been tough. I know it's been rough on him, but I can tell you that he's truly in this for the right reasons. The leader of the official opposition had said we'll get into the numbers, and I look forward to that. The suggestion that somehow this is we got hosed and it's a financial windfall for Bay Ferries is very misleading. I think that we need a good operator, and all sides of the House, all parties have indicated level of support, of full confidence and support in a Nova Scotia ferry. So it seems like we're back and forth over the agreement and our ability to negotiate. So that seems to be where it is. I put our efforts to the test. I believe in how we've structured this. I said this to the member during question period, but the relationship, he'll find this, the relationship that Bay Ferries had with the PC government in 2009 was very similar. And I don't want to compare contracts, Mr. Speaker. That's not, Mr. Chair. This is our relationship with Bay Ferries, so I don't want to get into that. But the reality is, Mark MacDonald presented a plan on operations, on startup, on the charter fee that would be required. We put together a fair deal. We've got the operational costs out there for all to see. Now it becomes about market performance, and we want this service to succeed, and we know it will. And let's let Mark and Bay Ferries do their business, and let's make sure that the Nova Scotia ferry is successful.
The Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chair. I know we're almost at the end of time, but I just would challenge the Minister to find any evidence where anyone's criticized Mark MacDonald. No one is holding him up to scrutiny. Our job is to hold him and his department up to scrutiny. Mark MacDonald obviously did a very good job in negotiating, and that's what we'll pursue with the Minister from his side of the transaction when we return the next time around.
The time has elapsed for this segment dedicated to the Progressive Conservatives. We'll now move on to the New Democratic Party, and I would like to recognize the Leader in the House of the New Democratic Party.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I just have a couple of, I'm hoping they're very brief questions, and I did talk to you earlier about them, what direction I was going in with it. But before, I am going to ask you about a school that's going to be constructed in Dartmouth South, in Southdale, and there was a school there that was demolished, and this new one is being built. Is it the actual funding for building the school would come out of education then, I guess, not out of your department? Okay. So if you are doing studies, traffic studies, that sort of
Order,
thing,
please.
Would that come out of
Order, please. Just want to remind the member not to refer to you, to pose your questions through the chair.
All right.
The Honourable Leader in the House of the New Democratic Party.
Minister, okay. Okay, Minister, appropriate? Thank you. Okay, so Minister, yes, the question, what I wanted to ask you was, do those,
Order, please.
sorry,
Again, not utilize the word, please do not utilize the word "you." Do not speak directly to the minister. Direct your question to the minister through the chair, if that can be of some help.
it's late, I guess I'm not catching on. I'm mostly interested in whether there is a particular, if traffic studies are being done by TIR, would it be coming out of their budget? That's my question to the minister.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank the member opposite for the question. Generally, just on the infrastructure piece on the capital, so it would basically, a school in this instance would be under the government's capital plan, the overall capital plan. So it would be, so it's inside that capital plan for government's overall project list, and then obviously because of the nature of the work, it would come directly and it would be subject to the work of TIR. Again, generally speaking, any cost directly associated with a school build would be part of the capital. So there's a number of different examples, and you know, it depends. It certainly depends. It's case by case and depends on the different situation for each and every build. But generally speaking, a lot of the costs that are associated with any build, the design work, traffic study, in some instances, would be subject to being capitalized for that project.
The Honourable Leader in the House of the New Democratic Party.
Thank you. Just by way of background, in this particular project, there had been a traffic study done to determine the best bus loop for the school. There has been a residential group that has formed because they've exercised some concerns about the options that have been chosen, and I understand it's through TIR, who did propose and do the traffic study. Their position is that the street that was chosen, and it is a very narrow lane, I've had the opportunity to go there and I've observed it myself. I think it's only 29 meters in width, and so it's somewhat of a lane as opposed to a street. That site was selected as the bus route, the school bus route, and it has probably two 45-degree angles. It's narrow. If it's a bad winter, there's a tremendous amount of snow. The residents are very concerned. It's been determined that there might be 9 buses per day, and while they're certainly not a constant in the area, they, given the, they view it as a public safety concern. They have made inquiries. I've made inquiries on their behalf, and I actually filed a petition on their behalf in the fall. Their concern is that the last traffic study that was done did not incorporate an assessment of this particular street, Mulverton Road. Their concern is that the traffic study was done on what had been the previous bus route, which this school, or before the school was demolished. And then when it was considered inappropriate, and I've seen that and I know that that is inappropriate too, there would be some safety issues there as well. But their concern is that another study needs to be done, that the study that was done before didn't include Mulverton and then just kind of used it as a backup because the original proposal wasn't appropriate. So that's my question, I guess, is I'm wondering, if it is possible, if it's the norm, should there be another study done just to assess that, given the number of issues the citizens have raised?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that in this particular instance, to the honourable member, we would probably have to regroup and maybe get some of the concerned residents in touch with our officials that would have been directly related to that. Clearly, if there's an issue with safety and navigation of a roadway in any event, then we'd want to be sure that we're doing the right things. And if there's our concerns, we'd want to address them to the extent possible, and in particular when it leads up to a school. So I think we'd probably have to get some work there. Again, if there was, I can tell you from the folks that represent our department, TIR, of course, Education and Health, we just want to get it right. So if there's issues with a school assessment, with a traffic assessment for a school, then obviously we want to make sure that we've been diligent to consider and reconsider any ideas. And if this was done based on an old route, then clearly there's dated information that we'd have to update. So I think the best thing to do is maybe we could link up the group you're representing with some of our folks at the department to talk about some of this stuff, and if it warranted a relook at the assessment and a study, then we could do that, but maybe we can just get some clarity on what the issues are and see where our department people sit with that.
The Honourable Leader in the House of the New Democratic Party.
Yes, and thank you. I don't want to misrepresent in any way. There was a newer study done. It's just that the residents feel that Mulverton was not properly assessed as well. Anyway, I thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. Those are my questions, Mr. Chair.
Recognize now the Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister. I don't get to ask too many transportation questions, especially about roads. I must admit my riding is, I think, almost 100% municipally run and maintained roads, other than the highways around my constituent, which the TIR maintenance have been quite efficient to fix any of the problems. But we do as a caucus look through the budget and have questions. So mine are maybe more specific questions, which I'll be taking out of the actual budget estimate supplementary detail book. And I'll try to give you the page and then maybe just ask for some clarification and more information on it. So I want to start with the under the estimates 2.6, page 2.6, General Revenue Fund. It notes that the TCA cost shared revenue more than doubled last year. It was 32, or from last year to this year. So the estimate to estimate was about 33 million, I believe, and now it's going to be up to 74.1 million. So I just wonder, can you explain this? Where does this revenue go, and will any of that be spent on infrastructure projects? So page 2.6 on the front of the estimates and supplementary details under general revenue.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the member opposite. The line item in question includes an injection of 51.4 million from the World Trade and Convention Centre. So that's the federal contribution to the Convention Centre project.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
So that was from the federal government. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I understood the Premier mentioning that all that money, the 100 and some million that we got from not only the municipality but the federal government, was going on the debt. But what you're saying is it's showing up here as an increase in that line item. And just to be clear, because I'm unclear on the Premier's comments.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
So this line item reflects our department, but the revenue portion is held centrally. So that's the 51.4. That's our spot for the World Trade and Convention Centre as our role in it for our budget, but the revenue portion itself is held centrally and part of that larger number that the Premier had alluded to.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
And then I might as well go right under the other fees and charges. there's more than pretty close to doubles, $2 million from estimate to estimate, a little bit more if you actually look at the forecast from what was spent to $4.3 million. So other fees and charges, I wonder if you could give us a little bit of a detail on what other fees and charges entail on that line item.
Just a reminder to members to work on not using the word "you" in their questioning. I would now like to recognize the Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to the honourable member, the two line items that really bump up that number are transfers in from the Department of Internal Services. So it would be the utilities line and also the real property services. So that particular department would show a decrease to those amounts with those particular areas.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and sorry about that. Definitely through you to the Minister. I know this is the start of the budget estimates, and there has been a lot of things moving around departments. So we're going to have a lot of questions on is there a breakdown of those specific items somewhere in the documents provided, or is it that that's your answer? Is there a breakdown that we can have exactly what it is, and are you able to provide the committee that?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
That it doesn't exist. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It doesn't exist as a list at this point, but we could easily do that for the member to provide an indication of what things have moved from internal services into our Department of Transportation Infrastructure Renewal. So we can put that together. Probably take a couple days, but it's just literally pulling these line items out of the overall budget and itemizing them from what's come from ISD to TIR.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we would appreciate that because I know even after the budget was tabled, even within the media, like I said, there's been a lot of movement within departments, and that we would appreciate that, and I think Nova Scotians would appreciate getting that information. So I'm going to go into your department's budget numbers, starting at 22.2 under programs and services. And under the policy and planning, I'm just wondering if the Minister, through you, Mr. Chair, could give us a little bit of an overview of what that line item entails, what work goes on under policy and planning within the department.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the member opposite, I'm not sure if he was looking for a financial breakdown or just an explanation of. Okay, so just generally speaking, policy and planning. Yeah, policy and planning. Our Executive Director, Alan Grant, and his team. Obviously, it's as advertised. They do a lot of the key research and policy-related work, some of the legal aspects of what we do with respect to our major decisions, and Alan's shop really carries some of the major files and does a lot of the bulk of the research work and the preparation work for some of those major things. And of course, on a daily basis, the policy shop is connected to all of the aspects of our operations, from maintenance to road safety to the major decisions like the Yarmouth Fair, the Nova Scotia Ferry, the Blue Nose, and others.
The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And one of the reasons I ask, we've seen last year the estimates about $9.5 million. It climbed to about $22 million. So is that work? Do you look for external support? And is that what drove the cost up? About $12.6 million from the estimate to the forecast last year. And then, of course, we see a dramatic reduction this year of well over $20 million less spent in that. So a couple questions in there, I guess. Do you look for external support? And is that the reason behind a $12.6 million increase? And why such a dramatic decrease in the estimates this year of almost $20 million from what was spent last year to what will be estimated to be spent this year in the department?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to the member opposite, looking at the line items, a lot of the significant totals there that we would have changed would be related to the Nova Scotia Ferry. So last year there was an $8 million allotment for the previous operator. This year the startup for Bay Ferries was $12.3 million, so that's reflective in those numbers. But you'll notice the reason for the drop-off is if you look down below, the ferry is now under the grants and contributions sector. So we basically held that there under policy and planning as a temporary line item to house that, and now it's moved down, and those numbers will be reflected in their entirety down in the grants and contributions segment.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So can the minister, and I'm trying to do the math quickly here, Mr. Chairman, is it roughly say, it still would be down, it looks about $7 million, or more than $9 million maybe. So are you saying the $8 million for previous operator would have been the Nova Star, I would assume, and is that why it's different now with the estimate going forward? So was last year's $8 million? Of course, you won't need to pay that out. So is that the discrepancy between what was spent last year and what the estimates are this year?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just asking if the member opposite could elaborate a little bit. We're just trying to figure out where he's spotting the discrepancy, and if he sees one, that's reasonable. But what we're looking at here, if you look estimate to estimate, the difference is about $8 million, which is that temporary place where the ferry existed under that previous agreement. So hopefully that answers it. If not, you can certainly clarify. It's good? Okay, thanks.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once I sat down, it reflects that. So I'm just going to drop down to highway programs. Under snow and ice control, the estimate to estimate is pretty close to the same. But there was an increase of about $3 million in the forecast for the budget last year. I believe we had a mild winter, so why would we see a $3 million increase with such a mild winter, and maybe some details on that change in budget?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So looking at those numbers, we actually we did have a relatively mild winter. Last year, just to give a bit of context, last year our overall budget was about 80 million, which was significantly over what we had budgeted based on the very challenging winter we had last year. On top of that, what impacted us in this particular line item was the fact that we had a significant amount of snow that we had to deal with, and connected expenses from the previous year that came into this budgetary season, and the total number is about 7 million that we basically had carry over. A lot of that was related to the equipment, the impact on the equipment, and there certainly was some snow and ice related expenses as well. So the significant difference really, we would have been under budget had it not been for what happened very early in the fiscal year last year.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that. So now under Public Works, of course, a couple of the line items there, we see the estimate forecast from last year, and one is under real property services. But for the most part, under Public Works, there's an increase across the board, with many line items showing like zero expenditures last year, and one like building services are at $18 million. So I'm wondering if the Minister could explain these budget line items tied to the Public Works heading on page 22.2.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Public Works elements of the budget existed under internal services last year, so we have taken all of those over, and now they're housed here at the Department of Transportation.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and that's fine. But how are we as opposition or the public supposed to look at budget to budget from year to year when this happens? Why would there not be some kind of figure here, even though I know it doesn't fall under transportation infrastructure renewal now, but why is there not something showing what the budget was in internal services, if it was there, or if it was in health, or because we're gonna run into this throughout the estimates as we go forward in the next 80 hours or so. So I'm wondering, I don't know if the Minister can answer, or the staff, or financial support could indicate why then do we not have any kind of figure showing what it was under the old department? Is it in another? I know the chair is trying to help me, and hopefully this will help me through health budgets and the estimates in front of me. What is he pointing to?
The Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I certainly can appreciate the direct comparison that the member is looking for, but it does exist. If you look at pages 14.8 and 14.9 in the estimates and supplementary, it shows the estimate and forecast of all those particular line items do exist under internal services, and then because of the transition and the new housing of those services here, they would be reflected in previous ISD, and now they're actively with TIR.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for pointing that out. I would think there would be an easier way, but anyway, I didn't get to internal services estimates yet, and I'm sure the minister is happy about that, but I will go through it because I believe I'm the critic for that also, so now I'll have to double check back, but I appreciate that. And so without having that in front of me or looking at it, has there been any significant changes from when the budget was transferred from internal services, or are they pretty close to the similar budget that we seen last year? And I can appreciate if you can't answer right now, we'll have a look at it later, but I wonder if the minister could indicate if there's any significant changes, and if there is, which ones?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank the member for the question. The answer is no, both in the physical sense where these particular staff members and their shops were located really didn't change at all and won't necessarily change, and there's no significant impact on any of the line items. They're pretty much standard and carried over as they exist from the previous year's estimate and forecast, so it's pretty standard on both fronts.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll take the minister's word, but we will double check that and maybe get back to the minister later. But no, I appreciate that. So and now going to 22.4 under senior management programs and services. Notice that there was a reduction of 2 FTEs in, I would assume that's senior positions within the department. I wonder if the minister could indicate which positions might have been reduced. We had 11 under the estimates 2015-16. Now there are 9, I believe. So has there been a reduction of staff, or is it maybe unfilled position at this time? I know there are circumstances that happens. So it looks like just a reduction in 2, but I wonder if the minister could give us some information on that.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the member's question, 2 positions did change locations. One was an administrative position that went from this envelope to policy and planning, and a second was a project management position which was relocated to building services.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the minister. So again, jump down then, more significant change, and I know that some the financial services were moved to finance and treasury, but under corporate services unit, the funding staff FTEs went from 21 to 7. Is all those positions, were they under the financial services portion line item, and those positions moved to the Department of Finance and Treasury? And if not all of them, could you give a bit of detail on what positions were eliminated under the corporate services unit?
The Honourable Minister for Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I like this guy better when he's asking health-related questions. I don't like this line by line. So the answer is that there's 14 FTEs that were transferred from our department, our shop, to the Department of Finance and Treasury Board.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to turn to 22.7, page 22.7 under Highways and Bridges. First, looking at under Programs and Services, Mr. Chair, to the Minister, Of course, we're all concerned, even though, as I indicated in the start of my questioning, that most of the roads in my area are maintained by the municipality. I do travel quite often around the province, as the minister does, and so surface maintenance, road maintenance, all that is a concern. So under roadside maintenance, it looks like there was about $500,000 unspent in there. To me, the overall picture of the budget, maybe not much, but I would think $500,000 could have been used on some of the roads that I was on. So I'm wondering why, from the estimate to forecast, about, if I'm doing it right, about a $500,000 reduction in what was spent. I wonder if the minister could give us a little bit of information on why that would happen, especially with some conditions of the roads that we see around the province.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank the member for the question on this particular set of items under highways and bridges. So that basically roadside maintenance would be things like brush cutting, and obviously that's, as we talked earlier to his caucus colleague, the importance of that and what it means to some people on these rural roads for visibility and overall performance of the roadway. Within that group of programs and services, there is fluctuation because some of these jobs and some of these specific functions overlap. So, as an example, surface maintenance was up a similar amount that the roadside maintenance was down. So there could be overlap in the sense of those operating costs. With if a pothole was done, it could end up in another budget. So it's not necessarily part of that one. So you'll see some go up, some go down, but generally speaking, they all eventually land the overall allotment for that. Those items pretty much land in the same financial place.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the cutting of alders with the former member Junior Terrio would hammer the Conservative government over and over and over about the alders on the roads and the ditches and clearing them back. In a recent drive down towards Yarmouth, not the Valleyway, the other way, I would agree with them. At a certain point, they could use that. So, is there an asserted effort to make sure when we see like the narrowing of the highway, especially on the southwest heading to Yarmouth, that the roadside maintenance is? Could we not have said, okay, let's do a little extra? Could they do a little extra? I don't think I said you. About the shoulder of the road or the cutting of the alders and brush that kind of encroach the roadway. So I have to ask on behalf of the former member from Digby, why couldn't we actively go out and put another $500,000 in that work, and Junior would call you and say thank you very much. I'm sure he's still talking about the alders.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to the member opposite, part of the frustration sometimes with drivers is the little things in their view that could be done a little bit better, and I think brush cutting falls under that category, and some of that roadside maintenance. And the reality is, again, we talked about the fluidity of some of these particular line items under programs and services, and obviously this goes without saying, but the priority is always the road surface. So sometimes we put a little bit of extra attention on particular areas to the potholes and to making sure we address the surface first. And again, admittedly, sometimes it can be tough to get to the large-scale brush cutting. And again, in honesty, and Junior would attest to this, it really is a reactive basis in a lot of cases. So when we get calls, when there's complaints, when there's significant issues, that's really when there's a call to action, because there's so much impact by the alders and by the overall brush that we have surrounding our roadways and highway corridors, that we really get to them as best we can. And when we're in a particular area doing some of that work, then clearly we do our very best to concentrate on that area, and
sometimes it gets hard, very difficult to get back to particular areas, so you like to do as much as you can when you're there with other functions. So that's generally the practice, and again, we try to create a little bit of flexibility in those line items, so when there is a specific issue that has to be addressed, regardless of the operational impact and the time of year, we still get that done to make sure that concerns are addressed to the extent possible.
The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, and I can appreciate that, and appreciate the need to try to bring forward as much information as you can within the budget documents. But under that roadside maintenance, is there within the department, is there a budget for brush cutting within that road maintenance or somewhere in here? And you know, have you changed that? Is there increased that, or is it just all in the one pot of money?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the member opposite, it is a good question. That's one that people are genuinely would be interested in the response. Essentially, how it works with the brush cutting and some of these aspects of roadside maintenance, it's done very much at the organic level with the 4 districts. So what is done there is that they would obviously get their overarching envelope of what they can allocate for things like brush cutting, and they allocate it based on what they require. So we give the freedom and flexibility. I know that there's a deficit in all of our aspects of you know, operations, maintenance, and of course on the capital side, and we'd love to do more in every single aspect. But at the end of the day, we give our districts the flexibility to get out and talk to stakeholders like their MLAs, like community-minded folks who are concerned about particular problems in particular areas, and then they really create their own budget. So the overall number that you see there is a result of the different districts and their fundamental requests and the package they have for brush cutting. So that's sort of the way we do it as a standard, and then there could be some fluctuations and variations as the year goes on.
The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I won't go on too long on brush cutting on the roadside, but if the minister could provide us with maybe a breakdown of what brush cutting and roadside maintenance, a breakdown of that, we'd appreciate that. Under miscellaneous, last year's budget was $1.6 million, but ended up costing well over $5 million, and now we see it's back down to about $1.6 million. I'm wondering if the minister could indicate that's about a $3.5 million increase in miscellaneous. What does miscellaneous entail? And I wonder if the minister could give us some detail on that increase seen last year of about $3.5 million.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to the member's question, what this is in the miscellaneous is a allotment of money that we hold centrally for events that could take place, such as storm damage, things that we can't really budget for, that sort of come out of nowhere, that we would have held centrally at the department. And also a significant part of that is the third-party work. So anything that we do from a third-party perspective would be held under that account as well.
The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you able to provide a breakdown of that funds? I know it might not be in front of you, but so you budgeted $1.6 million, but it ended up being about 5.1. So wondering if the minister, and it doesn't have to be right now, could provide us with those details. So as they're looking for that, the other thing I want to look at is the actual FTEs. Significant drop, I would say, 25 less full-time FTEs employed or tied to the highways and bridges, which, Mr. Speaker, I know is a big concern for many Nova Scotians. We know the condition and the aging conditions of our bridges around the province and overpasses that do need support. And I know in public accounts we've had the Deputy Minister here on a number of occasions, and there's a huge list of work that needs to be done. So I'm wondering why, first, if you can give us a list of breakdown of that increase in the miscellaneous, but account for a reduction of about 25 FTEs under highways and bridges.
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the member opposite. First question, we can give you that breakdown. We can. That's something we can pull together in a hurry. With respect to the FTEs, if you the line item, the first number is for the summer on 22.7. That was the increase at 25 you reference, but on 22.8. You'll see an indication that there's an increase of 25 there. So it's really just the allocation of summer versus winter and how we put those hours across collective for the seasonal maintenance.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I was saying, highways and bridges, definitely concerning the bridges, and I would assume under that is overpasses included in the highway and bridges. So for reference, there's an overpass in my riding that is the 102 over the Cobequid Road, and when I take that, you notice quite a bit of crumbling on the side. It's not a highly used road underneath, it's highly used over top. So our overpasses included in the under the highways and bridges, or is that found somewhere else about maintenances of the overpasses on our 100 series highways that go over some of the more local roads, for example, in my riding?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the member's question, it is that would be part of the highways and bridges allotment, and that's one that we get, as I mentioned in response to a question earlier in QP. About the highways and bridges and the bridge work itself. 4,300 bridges is a daunting task, no question, and some of the challenges, obviously people get concerned, as they should, about the safety of the bridges, and a lot of that becomes the aesthetics and sort of the outside look. So people are concerned, and they would fear the fact that if there's crumbling concrete, if there's any visible signs of wear, that the bridge would be unsafe. And I just wanted to make that crystal clear that it's one of our biggest functions in the field, and inspecting those bridges to ensure that they're safe is paramount. It's a priority for our engineers that are out there every day on behalf of Nova Scotians. So I just want to make that clear that the aesthetics and how the appearance is one part of it, but obviously we have to know that these bridges are structurally sound. So that's a key part of our role and our job in doing the diligence that keep people safe here in the province every day.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would agree. Definitely, often it's the outside concrete that has no bearing on the structural safety of the bridge. So I would assume if there's constituents with concerns, they could call the local area. And this is more of a constituent question that I notice a big chunk of concrete that could potentially come down. So I would assume call to the local area, would have someone go out and have a look at it. I don't think I need to get an answer. I see some head nodding. Quickly, I know I'm running out of time. I only have about 2 minutes. 1 minute. 31 seconds. I don't have enough time to ask all my questions. I believe there are many more questions, Mr. Chairman, over the next little while, and the minister and his staff will be here tomorrow. So I appreciate the member or the minister's answers. I look forward to some of the information, and we'll have some more for tomorrow. One of the areas I want to look at when we start up again tomorrow is environmental services and remediation. Of course, this is something that was transferred in from internal services, and what I'll probably do is ask for some breakdowns on what that entails, what the department is doing to address some of the concerns around the province, and maybe ask some questions on that. So I appreciate the answers from the minister, and I believe we're pretty close to. Keep talking. All right. Maybe a quick one, if I can. Ferry and wharf amortization increase of about $500,000. I wonder if the minister could answer why such an increase this year.
Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
That's a great question.
Order, please. Time has elapsed. I recognize the Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The time having elapsed, I move that the committee do now rise and report progress and beg leave to sit again.
The motion is carried. The committee will now rise and report its business to the House.
Order, please. The chairperson of the Committee of the Whole House on Supply will now report.
That the Committee of the Whole on Supply has met and made progress and begs leave to sit again.
Thank you. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, will you please call government business bills for second reading?
Will now call government business bills for second reading.
Mr. Speaker, please call bill number 152, the Municipal Government Act.
Will now call bill number 152, the Municipal Government Act. The Honourable Minister of Municipal Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I move that Bill 152, an act to amend Chapter 18 of the Acts of 1998, the Municipal Governments Act, and Chapter 39 of the Acts of 2008, the Halifax Regional Municipality Charter, be now read a second time. Mr. Speaker, this bill is part of our government's attempts to reduce red tape in government. There has been a process in place for decades when it comes to debentures that are given out to municipalities that require municipalities to, in their application, actually have their physical seal on the documents, Mr. Speaker. That forces all of our municipalities to apply with paper documents, Mr. Speaker. What this legislation will do is eliminate that requirement of a physical seal and actually bring these laws into the 21st century in the digital age, which is something that we're very excited about and probably should have happened sooner. Mr. Speaker, just for the clarity of the House, there is the Municipal Finance Corporation, which through pooling the loans that are requested by our municipal units is able to provide debentures at a cheaper rate from the lender. So this will actually make that process easier, cheaper, and quicker for all of our municipal units, Mr. Speaker, and I don't anticipate that there will be any opposition to this bill in the legislature.
The honourable member for Pictou West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Minister for his brief words, which I have very brief words as well, but our caucus is obviously in favour of this. It's always important to find ways to reduce red tape and any kind of backlog of paperwork, and being able to modernize processes by making further use of technology is always important, and I'm glad to see that this bill will allow the Municipal Finance Corporation to do that. So we all look forward to this bill passing. Thank you.
The honourable member for Queens Shelburne.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And the two, I think, maybe is the hour, but our words are be very short on this. But anytime you can reduce red tape, I may have an issue with the word red tape, but it's good to see the government simplify the process for municipalities, and certainly I think we're all eager to for this to move on to law amendments, and we look forward to having those insights. Thank you.
If I'm to recognize the Honourable Minister of Municipal Affairs, sorry about that, the Honourable Member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today just to make a few comments about this change in the municipal charter, municipal government charter. It states that a debenture shall be in the form of approved by the council and signed by the mayor, a warden, and clerk, and or other designated person of council by policy, and sealed with the municipal seal. This bill is proposing the seal be required, not be required anymore, and removed. Also, stakeholders who provide with opportunities to engage and were informed through discussions at the Association of Municipal Administrators Board, and there's no anticipated cost to the province. The amendments are required to be made by the Municipal Governments Act and Halifax Regional Municipality Charter to allow for Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corporation to simplify its debenture process by going paperless. That is the removal of the use of the municipal seal. This will allow MFC to move the process along in a more efficient manner. This amendment was required, as stated by the minister, as a minor housekeeping amendment reducing red tape. Municipal Finance Corporation issues and debentures on behalf of the municipalities to help their finances and capital projects at a lower cost. I think we all believe that, and I'm hearing the opposition's comments that they also feel this is an administrative act and it's a good one to remove red tape, make things pass a little faster, and get debentures out on to the municipalities at a quicker pace too. So thank you very much. That's it for me. Thanks. Appreciate it.
If I'm to recognize the Honourable Minister of Municipal Affairs, it will be to close second reading on Bill number 152, the Municipal Government Act. The Honourable Minister of Municipal Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleagues for their support of this legislative change, and I'd like to move second reading of this bill so we can allow the public to provide their feedback on this at Law Amendments Committee.
The motion is for second reading of Bill number 152, the Municipal Government Act. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 152, an act to amend Chapter 18 of the Acts of 1998, the Municipal Government Act, and Chapter 39 of the Acts of 2008, the Halifax Regional Municipality Charter.
Ordered that this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please call Bill number 154, the Halifax Regional Municipality Charter.
We'll now call Bill number 154, the Halifax Regional Municipality Charter. The Honourable Minister of Municipal Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I move that Bill 154, an act to amend Chapter 39 of the Acts of 2008, the Halifax Regional Municipality Charter, be now read a second time. Mr. Speaker, this is in continuation with our government's effort to create a higher level of, a higher standard of accountability and transparency with our municipal financing during campaigns. In the fall, we brought forward legislative changes that enhance the reporting for all of our municipal units when it comes to the donations that candidates receive and the expenses that they incur throughout the course of municipal elections. This is a continuation of that work. It is a result of a specific request from HRM, particularly Mayor Savage. He has been a leader in terms of pushing for a more transparent, open, and accountable expense regime within Halifax for municipal elections. And this legislative change would be enabling for HRM to develop a bylaw around campaign financing. There's a reason why this is going to be specific to HRM and not broad-based across the province, Mr. Speaker, because we need to recognize the unique situation that HRM is in, because being our capital region, the amount of people, the amount of donations that come in is far greater than in other parts of the province, where in fact some municipal councillors don't even fundraise or get any donations to run in their elections. So I'm very excited to move forward with this bill and give HRM a chance to develop a bylaw as they see fit around their municipal financing when it comes to election campaign, Mr. Speaker. This is not prescriptive in nature. It is simply enabling so that they are able to do that. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Pictou West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Transparency and clear rules for campaign financing serve the interests of citizens and help to strengthen democracy. Having such rules in place helps to level the playing field, make elections fairer, and encourage Nova Scotians to put their name forward to run for elected office. I am pleased that this bill will allow the Halifax Regional Municipal Council to come to an agreement and strengthen election financing. Being the largest municipality in the province, it would be a positive step forward to see clear and transparent rules. The timing of this bill is also very important, considering municipal elections are taking place this fall. I recognize that there will be different opinions on Council regarding the best way to improve the system, but it is my hope that the HRM Council will act to clarify rules and in the process increase voters' trust in the municipal elections. So thank you so much. As you can tell, we're in favour of this bill as well.
The honourable member for Queens Shelburne.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And it's a delight to talk to you on Bill 154, the Halifax Regional Municipality Charter. I can assure the members in the House present that this caucus do have some concerns, and certainly it treats HRM separately from all the other municipalities across Nova Scotia, allowing HRM to set its own rules for election financing. The province is not providing any guidelines for the rules for election financing, and that will be set by HRM themselves. The power proposed to be granted certainly is very wide and open for abuse. For example, HRM will be allowed to set the upper limits for contribution and who is eligible for that contribution. And I can assure the members here that I came from a municipal background, and I can assure you that the limits of contributions at the municipal level, and I know HRM is separate. In fact, I've never seen a very limited contributions of probably less than $100 to be active in rural municipalities. So this particular issue has really jumped out at me, and if you're frequent in watching the fundraising that's going on to our neighbour to the south, donations, George Clooney, for instance, raised $350,000 just to have a meal for a individual that was raising money. So I mean, I'm making the extreme example here, and it's somewhere in between them that HRM is going to have to set that ceiling. And I come up when reviewing this, and I'm going to leave you with one question to ponder. And you can believe that HRM will set a maximum, will be somewhere in between them two ceilings, I would think. But if HRM is allowed to set that amount, this is the question I want you to ponder while before this goes off to law amendments. The question is, would not any councillor be in conflict if involved with a certain contractor who made a donation to that ceiling? And to me, the question posed is, if that happens at HRM, that particular councillor would just declare conflict of interest. That's the question. So what are they trying to gain here? And to me, I would say that that person dealing with the municipal issue, and if you have a $10,000 or $15,000 ceiling and is involved in a decision from a certain contractor, that he would simply declare conflict. To me, that is a common sense approach. So I look forward to this going off to law amendments and seeing if other people have that same concern. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Yes, again. I'm pleased to rise to comment on this. I was a municipal councillor, and I think the guidance that we can get from our changing of this amendment to allow Halifax have the authority to enact bylaws with respect to campaign financing for elections for Halifax Council. I think that's a very simple request that allows the municipality to decide what the limits will be, who you can get funding from, and whether it's contractor or personal residents of the community. So I think it's about time that we get those levels set, because Halifax Regional Municipality, when I was helping Councillor Dalrymple to get elected over the last 2 elections, his costs for his costs incurred by the running for council was, first year was around $27,000, and the second time $35,000. That's a lot of money, and you should know where this money is coming from. And it maybe what you say is fine, use their own conscience, but a lot of times the councillor doesn't know where, or the potential councillor doesn't know where that money is coming from, and neither they shouldn't know who it's coming from. Is my personal thought. At any rate, the Halifax Regional Council has expressed that the current rules of the Municipal Government Act are not extensive enough for the level of campaign financing that is currently taking place in HRM. And you'll have to thank our Minister of Municipal Affairs for his foresight in recognizing the importance of this administrative issue. It's great that we are supporting the municipalities, and this would go for other municipalities, but other than regional municipality of Cape Breton, they may not have the same, they may be in the same levels types of costing for financing. Smaller municipalities are probably, it's not necessary. Also, USM has demonstrated support, thorough consultation over municipalities' voice that were not interested in having this change through the MGA, not enough funds raised to warrant that change. And I think the biggest part that should be talked about is the Minister of Municipal Affairs is on record of saying transparency and accountability are important to citizens and to all levels of government, particularly in the democratic process of elections. Halifax Regional Council asked for the authority to make bylaws around municipal election campaign financing. So we are making this change to their charter to allow them to do that. So I'll return to my seat, and thank you very much for the time and listening to those comments.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Municipal Affairs. It will be to close second reading on Bill number 154, the Halifax Regional Municipality Charter. The Honourable Minister of Municipal Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleagues for their comments. I'd like to thank the Conservative caucus for the support of this bill. I will say I found the position of the NDP on this to be ambiguous, to say the least. To answer the question related to conflict of interest that the member from Queen Shelburne raised. I will say that that was not contemplated in the development of these legislative changes, simply because we do have a conflict of interest policy in place that our municipal units do follow. HRM has one, and of course our full expectation would be that they comply with that. In the case of anybody not complying with a conflict of interest law, we do have a conflict of interest commissioner office who actually has been recently involved in one such case in one of our municipalities. So to answer that specific question, no, that was not included in these because that framework does currently exist with the right enforcement in place to deal with such situations as they arise. Again, Mr. Speaker, this is in the spirit of increasing the level of accountability, transparency, and openness when it comes to campaign financing for HRM, recognizing their specific unique situation as our large capital region and the amount of dollars that are used for campaigns here. The mayor has been a leader along with his council in terms of pushing this agenda forward, and we've been very happy to partner with them as we move through with this legislative process. Thank you very much.
Motion is for second reading of Bill number 154, the Halifax Regional Municipality Charter. Would all those in favor please say aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 154, an act to amend Chapter 39 of the Acts of 2008, the Halifax Regional Municipality Charter.
Ordered that this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, please call Bill number 156, the Public Archives Act.
We'll now call Bill number 156, the Public Archives Act. The Honourable Minister of Communities, Culture and Heritage.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill be read a second time. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, I introduced in the House of Assembly Bill 156, amendments to the Nova Scotia Public Archives Act. The Public Archives of Nova Scotia is a significant cultural institution in this province. It connects Nova Scotians to their past by ensuring that their documentary heritage is preserved and made available for all Nova Scotians. It shows leadership by engaging public through social media and online collections. It also shows leadership through participation in culture-related events like Nocturne. Let me give you an example. This year, during Nocturne, the Public Archives invited people to see themselves in the photographs of Wallace McCaskill by projecting an image on a screen and allowing people to stand in front of that image to take selfies. People lined up for this, and which is a reminder of the significance of our past in our daily lives. It presented in preparation for Heritage Day 2016. The archive staff digitized and made available a scrapbook created by Joseph Howe's son about his father's life and significance. The archives also provided online access to the No. 2 Construction Battalion nominal roll during African Heritage Month. The roll lists names of all men in the battalion. That will be a resource for people across Canada, in the United States, and the Caribbean who have an ancestor who was a member of that battalion. So much of the achievements of people of African descent remain unknown, and documents like this help to uncover the history and give families and communities pride. Likewise, the work of making Nova Scotia's historical newspapers available online will help researchers and others to learn more about their local community history, even to experience it a bit of Nova Scotia's past. This spring, we want to modernize the legislation that shapes this institution. Staff at the Public Archives and the Department of Communities, Culture and Heritage consulted with stakeholders on proposed changes. Those stakeholders are the people in this province who are most interested in this work, such as the Royal Nova Scotia Historical Society, the Council of Nova Scotia Archives, the Genealogical Society of Nova Scotia, and of course the Public Archives Board and the Department of Internal Services. Their feedback was an important contribution to the amendments. The amendments we propose accomplish 4 goals: to ensure that the legislation reflects government practice and accountability regarding records management. One of the goals is also to clarify the mandate of the Public Archives of Nova Scotia, that it is for the benefit of current and future generations, and that it assists the province archival community. Third, to clarify the role of the Board of Trustees and to change the name of the board that better reflects its advisory role, and to better engage stakeholders in the work of the Public Archives of Nova Scotia. An important reason to update the legislation was in 2009. Government changed the accountability of its records management, including associated training. That work now resides with the Department of Internal Services under the Government Records Act, which is also being amended to reflect this change. As well, archival practices have changed over the years, and so the Act needs to change to provide proper legislative support for current standards and best practices. For example, the Archives has always ensured that the public can access its records it preserves. How it ensures public access has changed with the Internet. Archive staff have been digitizing large parts of the collection in recent years, so people can explore the heritage of their home from their home computers at any time of day or night. For researchers working at home and for all others, when the archive building is closed, they can access those records online. The role of the Public Archives of Nova Scotia in supporting the province's archival community, and also to better reflect in the legislation, we have made that happen by including language that specifically names this function. As well, we need to clarify the role of the Public Archives Board of Trustees. The board advises the provincial archivist and will now be known as the Advisory Board of Public Archives. It also plays a role in engaging the archival community in the institution, and we introduce a new concept to the Act. Board members should bring the archives information, assistance, and ideas about archival matters directly from the stakeholders and related communities directly to the archives. This is particularly exciting opportunity for the Public Archives, and we are sure it will be exciting for the broader community as well. It should prove to be useful and engaging and for our most interested stakeholders. An advisory board should not be responsible or accountable for gifts, bequests, trust funds, or amounts received by the province for the Public Archives. An amendment to the Act states that these will be managed by the provincial archivist. Future board members will be approved by the minister instead of governor and council. However, the board continues to make recommendations to the minister. That does not change. We have also moved some of the wording about board composition to regulations. Those will be developed over time in consultation with stakeholders. This will provide more opportunity for Nova Scotians to participate in the board's activities. Mr. Speaker, the Public Archives has done an excellent job of expanding its public outreach, and we want to ensure that its role in giving the public access to their culture and heritage is appropriately supported in legislation. Thank you.
The honourable member for Pictou West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the minister for his comments. And I am pleased to stand here myself and speak to Bill 156. Nova Scotia is a province steeped in culture. It's a place where people take pride in reciting their family tree back many, many generations. Who's your father's father is a uniquely Nova Scotia question that speaks to the pride we have in our past and the value we place on our culture. The legislation has an element of housekeeping to it, but it would be a mistake to minimize the importance of the public archives. For history buffs, it's a treasure trove. The archives acquires, preserves, and makes available to the province's documentary heritage, recorded information of provincial significance created or accumulated by government and the private sector over the last 300 years. It's one of Canada's oldest archival institutions, and this bill ensures the excellence that the archives is known for and will continue because of the enhanced accountability and transparency that this bill will create. And it ensures that Nova Scotians, researchers, and visitors will continue to have access to this collection. I am particularly pleased that the archives' work to digitize the collection is ongoing. All of us with kids know that the internet is their primary source of information. By putting the collection online, the archive is strengthening the ties of our kids and how they feel towards history and our culture. We will watch with interest as the regulations governing the composition of the advisory board of the public archives are developed. I am hopeful that they will truly represent the diversity of our province. And Mr. Speaker, the archives is such a valuable institution that I think we would all agree with that in this chamber. And I hope as these changes are made, more Nova Scotians will become aware of it, of the collections, and of course the important work that they do. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Dartmouth South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think the comments that have gone before me have been very well articulated to explain the importance of this particular act. The maintenance of historical records is, of course, crucial. And this particular piece of legislation is dealing with housekeeping issues. It's dealing with making important clarifications, especially with regard to the mandate and the clarifying the role of the public archivist. It is ensuring that there is enduring public access to the records that are maintained at the archives. There's also clarity on the process for destruction of any public records. I believe that this I'm pleased to support it. Our caucus supports the amendments as proposed. It is certainly in the public good in that it achieves and improves accessibility for all Nova Scotians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Antigonish.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to speak briefly on this legislation. I think in particular, just to acknowledge, I have a number of former colleagues that actually do research that rely heavily on the resources that are available in the public archives, Mr. Speaker. And so while I haven't spoken to them about this legislation in particular directly, I do know how much they've commented on the support and the work of the people that work in the archives for the province. And I just wanted to acknowledge that hard work, and on behalf of those colleagues that that I've worked with and others across the province who make use of those resources. I just want to acknowledge the work of the Minister and this legislation as role in continuing to improve the work being done there.
If I'm to recognize the Honourable Minister of Communities, Culture and Heritage, it will be to close second reading on Bill number 156, the Public Archives Act. The Honourable Minister of Communities, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to thank the members across the floor for their support of this bill. I'd also like to thank my colleague, the Minister of Finance, for his nice words. Mr. Speaker, I now move to close reading on this bill.
Motion is for second reading of Bill number 156, the Public Archives Act. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried.
Bill number 156, an act to amend Chapter 24 of the Acts of 1998, the Public Archives Act.
Ordered that this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Deputy Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please call Bill number 157, the Government Records Act?
We'll now call Bill number 157, the Government Records Act. The Honourable Minister of Internal Affairs.
Internal Services.
Services.
Mr. Speaker, I move that a bill to amend the Government Records Act be read a second time. The proposed amendments to the Government Records Act are an opportunity to demonstrate government's commitment to standardizing and streamlining the way it manages operations, including record keeping. I will not say red tape reduction, Mr. Speaker. It's been said enough. Internal Services supports the public sector to deliver the programs Nova Scotians rely on. We are keenly focused on delivering our programs and services efficiently and effectively. Internal Services is positioned to meet our goals so other departments can focus on delivering important programs to Nova Scotians. Our initiatives, including today's amendments to the Government Records Act, all aim to ensure quality and sustainable services for Nova Scotians. Today's legislation is important for several reasons. First, it will streamline records management processes and provide clear direction on requirements and responsibilities. For example, the Act currently contains a number of details around the process for reviewing and approving records schedules. In order to streamline the process, procedural details will be removed from the Act. Essential oversight requirements will still be maintained. Second, a new framework for common records schedules will also be created and shared across government. This new framework will make it easier for departments and agencies to follow government-wide standards and benefit from centralized resources and services. So today's changes will mean greater efficiencies in records management, consistent records management processes throughout government, and increased standardization. This will allow government to better leverage existing centralized resources and support this work. The Act also reflects changes to the organizational structures of government. Records management used to be part of the public archives but is now part of Internal Services. The Act will be updated to reflect the new structure. Similar amendments will be made to the Public Archives Act today to reflect the current structure. On that note, Mr. Speaker, I shall take my seat and I look forward to hearing from other members regarding this bill.
The Honourable Member for Pictou Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are pleased to see these changes to the Government Records Act. Some of the changes reflect the transition of the records management function from the Public Archives of Nova Scotia to the Chief Information Office. I'll carry on there, Mr. Speaker. Since that change began in 2009, it is past time for the legislation to catch up. We are hopeful that changes in this bill will result in improvements to the current records management process. Clear, standardized, consistent records lead to greater transparency, openness, and accountability. I note that the Government of British Columbia's Ministry of Technology, Innovation, and Citizen Services has developed a range of guides, fact sheets, and online modules to support the effective management of government records. I hope the Minister has examined this system, which appears to have informative tools for staff and others who deal with government records. The Government of Alberta has an information management website. This site provides information on the management of the Government of Alberta information assets. This is a place to find tools and resources on the Corporate Records Management Program. It also provides access to information produced by Service Alberta, the Provincial Archives of Alberta, and other government entities to effectively manage information in all media. This is another example, excellent example of openness and accountability. Mr. Speaker, we will watch with interest as this process goes forward in our province and hope the Minister will provide the House with updates. With those few words, Mr. Speaker, I will take my place.
The honourable member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad to take a few moments to talk on Bill 157. Ensuring that our laws are modern and reflect present-day reality is critical, I believe, in this day and age of government records. And government records are no exception, Mr. Speaker. The archives acquire, preserve, and make available the province's documentary history, recorded information of provincial significance, or accumulated by government and the private sector, and it has been doing so for over 300 years. Our government records are incredibly important documents and should be protected by government, and I'm encouraged, Mr. Speaker, to see this Act address in keeping our records safe, accurate, and reliable. We do have some questions around the necessary, if it's necessary to repeal the provision that actually makes the provincial archivist chair of the Government Records Committee, and I know the change will allow for the minister now to have responsibility to approving two public figures, not executive council. So we look forward to this going through law amendments and maybe some explanation on why the provincial archivist will no longer be chair, but we're glad to see this go through the process, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
I recognize the Honourable Minister of Internal Services. It will be to close second reading on Bill number 157, the Government Services Act. The Honourable Minister of Internal Services.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the members for their comments and feedback to the bill. Mr. Speaker, I rise to close debate on this bill to amend the Government Records Act. Thank you.
Motion is for second reading of Bill number 157, the Government Records Act. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye? Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried.
Bill number 157, an act to amend Chapter 7 of the Acts of 1995-96, the Government Records Act.
Ordered that this bill be referred to the Committee on Law Amendments. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That concludes the government's business for today. The House will meet again tomorrow, Friday, April 22nd, from the hours of 9 to 6 p.m. Following the daily routine question period, we will return to debate on supply. Also, possibly second reading of the bills introduced today, which is 158 and 160. Speaker, I can also advise that for those who are following, that the Committee on Law Amendments will meet on Monday, April 25th at 9 a.m., during which time the following bills will be considered: Bill number 149, 152, 154, 156, and 157. Speaker, for the members' information, the House will be meeting on Monday, April 25th from 4 to 10 p.m., just so that members can plan their weekend accordingly. With that, Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now rise to meet again tomorrow morning.
Motion is for adjournment for the House to rise tomorrow, Friday, April 22nd, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Would all those in favor of the motion please say aye? Aye. Contrary-minded, nay. Motion is carried. The House now stands adjourned until tomorrow, Friday, April 22nd at 9 a.m.